Hey everyone, this is Krista Bontrager, and I'm here with my friend Mark Ritter. He's a science teacher down in southern Orange County. He's also a college professor. And one of the things that I know that Mark is really interested in and passionate about is conversations about the extra dimensionality of God. And I thought it would be fun, since we've been talking about the Trinity in class, to have Mark kind of weigh in and talk to us a little bit more about the extra dimensionality of the Trinity. Because, Mark, one of the constant questions that this person brings to me is, well, the historic Christian idea of the Trinity is just something I can't relate to. I can't understand it. I can't picture what we're talking about. Isn't that just a contradiction? And so I thought maybe it would be fun if you could kind of help us think about that, and how we can use extra dimensions to begin to think more carefully about the Trinity.
I would actually agree with them in that it sounds contradictory and I don't get it and all that sort of stuff. So that in that place we can hold hands together. But to say that it just will never make sense, or therefore it must be false, I don't understand that anymore, quite frankly. But it all has to do with extra dimensions. The God of the Bible is beyond space and time. If he really is extra dimensional, then I would expect him to have extra dimensional characteristics. And by having extra dimensional characteristics, almost says out loud that I won't be able to totally get it. So I accept that fact going in, that I won't be able to totally understand the Trinity. I get that. But if I can have some sort of foothold to at least base some faith on it, that would be awesome. Rather than just go through the contradictory, how can there be three gods but one God, three persons but one person, but one? It's very confusing. I get that. I understand it. But if you open up the idea of extra dimensions, then it's not really that tough to accept. I'll never understand it, but I at least can accept the fact that that's very possible to have something that's seemingly contradictory in our space and time, not be contradictory when you're up there with him, or beyond, I should say, with him. Okay, one of the things I try to explain to people who are curious in how extra-dimensional things might really exist, but we can't really understand them, is to use a soup can. A soup can to us is just a cylinder. We're so familiar with the cylinder; it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. We get it. But if I were to describe a soup can, I would say that it's got a circular component and it has a rectangular component. It has both circle and rectangle. That's all fine. We get it. We live in three dimensions. A cylinder's okay. It's not like we're going to lose sleep trying to understand this. But if I try to explain to somebody who actually lives in one dimension less, we live in three spatial dimensions. If I tried to explain to somebody who lives in two dimensions what a cylinder is, it ain't happening. Because all they have on that little, well, let's just imagine they live on a piece of paper. All they have on that little piece of paper is either circles or rectangles. They don't have cylinders. So trying to explain to somebody who lives in two dimensions without a sense of depth at all, I mean, they just, not only don't they have a sense of depth, there is no depth to even have a sense for. All they have is circles and rectangles. If I could say to them, if I could visit them, I say, you know what, in where I live, circles or rectangles can be the same thing. It doesn't work in their brain. They just don't get it. Circle is not equal to a rectangle. I learned that in math class. I've never seen one of your cylinder things. And when you say these cylinder things are just circles stacked on each other, I just see a circle stacked on each other. And if you say a rectangle, you could say that cylinder is a rectangle that's spun around. All I see is a rectangle spinning around. I don't even know what you're talking about, so you must be cracked in the head or something. Okay, I get that, Mr. Flatman. You get it. You don't have access to my three dimensions. You don't understand what a simple cylinder is. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It just means you will never get it by virtue of the fact that you have just one less dimension of space. And so this is, to me, is a great analogy for the Trinity, in that there are two things that are one, but I don't get the one. I just don't get how those two things could be one. I get the circle, I get the rectangle and flatland, but I don't get a cylinder. I get that the Bible says there are three persons and that there's one God, but I don't get how they can be one God. I just don't get that. But the extra dimension leaves open for me the idea that it's not impossible. It's not impossible at all. It's not one of those things that just cannot be. It can be if you open up the extra dimensions of space and time where we believe God resides and lives in and functions in. If I could take Flatman out of his little flat world and say, hey, come on, visit me for a second, I could show him the cylinder and go, look, is that a circle and a rectangle? Oh my gosh, it is. It's something I never even imagined. And then if I said, now go back to Flatland and explain this to the people, just tell them that you saw a cylinder, explain this to them. He's going to go crazy trying to use his words to explain that to them. He won't be able to. It's just not going to happen. But he knew that when he went into our dimensions, it can be. And it wasn't that difficult to understand once he left his little prison of 2 dimensions. We can't expect to fully understand everything about an infinitely big and eternal God. Oh my gosh! This ain't gonna happen. There are not words to describe the indescribable God. So if I expect to understand everything about God, I will be very disappointed. Moreover, if there's a faith out there that attempts to explain everything about God, I'm really suspect about that. Because if any God is beyond space and time, I don't expect to fully understand him. If somebody says, look, my book explains everything and nothing seemingly contradictory or illogical at all, it's perfect, then I'm going, you know what, thank you very much. I'll say, I'm gonna see you later now. Because that doesn't make any sense to me. How can you fully understand something that's beyond space and time? Well, we do. No, friend, you don't. You can't. It's impossible. It's like trying to explain this to flat man. It's just not going to happen.